Hey everyone, it's Erin with Counter Read, joined by Brandon, also of Counter Read, and we are here for kind of like not a midweek check-in, not even the day before a game check-in. It's Thursday, so depending on when you're watching this, that is when it was recorded. But let's talk Nebraska versus Maryland, 11 a.m. Central on Saturday. It will be on Peacock. So if you don't have Peacock, time to start looking into options because a free trial is no longer available from what I realize. So it's going to be interesting for people. We are back to the days of pay-per-view. But first, Brandon, how are you?
I'm well. I don't know how excited I am to be back to the days of pay-per-view, although it was more expensive then, but at least it was a one-time purchase. We knew this day was coming for Nebraska football, but just for football in general. Some schools have already experienced this, and fans of other schools have already experienced this. But things are just going to keep fragmenting. Everybody's going to try and snap up rights to games to get you sign up for their monthly billing subscription service, and so it goes. I guess what we will do for the opportunity to watch this sport.
Yeah, it is. It is a little bit strange, though, to think that we are back to where we once were not so long ago, and yet here we are. But it is going to be an interesting matchup. Nebraska and Maryland are both 5-4, trying to get bowl eligible. It is truly it's going to be an interesting one all around. I think both teams are kind of in the same boat in the sense that you know what do you have to lose at this point besides just the loss itself? I was it you who said, somebody, I feel like a few people have said this, that like Maryland is playing like a team that if it was in the Big Ten West might be at the top of the Big Ten West. I think that's true. So this is going to be an interesting one for Nebraska. You had a piece on counterread.com that went live this morning. Again, depending on when you're watching it, it's live at counterread.com right now. But it's about how this is two teams sitting at the roulette wheel of big plays. One of them is leaving bowl eligible on Saturday. Let's talk about it. Brandon, just give a quick recap of this story.
Yeah, so kind of the weekly game preview where I try to highlight three things from the game, kind of key numbers to watch. The reason I do that is I don't know, it's kind of how I ended up watching football, where you see numbers in the second quarter or the first quarter, and you kind of know like that's not a good sign, or sometimes you think, oh, that is a good sign. So that's kind of the structure I've chosen for this. Matt Rule started off the week talking about Maryland and its explosiveness offensively. I mean, this is the pass heaviest team in the Big Ten. So that's how Maryland plays. Ever since joining the Big Ten in 2014, they've always been athletic. They're in a pretty good recruiting area in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. So they've always had some players. They've always been had pretty good big play capability, and that's the case here as well. Nationally, they rank towards the middle of the pack in explosiveness, but in the Big Ten, that's good enough to lead the league, which kind of tells you about that. So it's a little bit of a clash of styles when Maryland has the football, because Nebraska is kind of classically Big Ten at this moment, very defense first and defense driven. It gets interesting though when the Huskers have the ball, because offensively, through injuries and just inexperience at some spots, I think this offense is at a point with 3 games remaining where it really needs to hit these big plays. Like it's just hard to see them, particularly against in Iowa for sure, maybe even Wisconsin. And Maryland's pretty good defensively. It's just hard to see them going on 9-10 play drives and scoring touchdowns. They haven't done it a whole lot this year. So those plays, which we stood out against Purdue and Northwestern, the long touchdown passes to a pair of freshmen, are cool. Like it's nice to score on one play, but I think at this point for Nebraska, they're almost essential.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear, like when you say And this is actually fascinating to me that Nebraska is playing very Big Ten football right now, or at least trying as much as it can. I said this though, excuse me, after the loss to Michigan State, and I will be curious a little bit for Nebraska against Maryland to see this because we know Satterfield is not one to go to the podium and give a whole lot away. That's just not his style. We get to hear from him once a week on Tuesdays. And you could throw as many offensive scheme questions his way. He's just not really going to dive into those details. However, I am curious to see maybe some of the adjustments that they make over the coming week or have made over the past week. We had heard heading into Michigan State that Nebraska was working on turnovers and working on ball security, and there's definitely some areas of that needs to still be hopefully very heavily worked on. But kind of reading some of the comments from just so far on your story has been really interesting because somebody joked this might be asinine, but would they ever run the Wildcat where Sims is the one under center with Harbor going in at wide receiver? I saw that you responded and said, by the time you get to Iowa, really probably anything is on the table. And I think I was going to respond to that and say, I don't know if we will necessarily see that against Maryland, but I am of the belief and of the point right now where nothing should not be considered at this point. You are playing with, again, I keep saying it, but nothing to lose except just the game itself, which would then ultimately not make you bowl eligible if you don't get there. But Nebraska still has the road to get bowl eligible. So I guess my whole thing is if it's not going the way you exactly thought it would, maybe it's time to switch that up just ever so slightly. So maybe you do get a little bit creative in how you position players, especially when you look at an offensive line that may or may not be able to really protect the quarterback much. Do you then get a little bit tricky? We'll see. But that's something for me where I'm like, do we see some of that against Maryland, or is it still too early? And again, Satterfield doesn't give us a whole lot when it comes to and I don't expect him to. But even when you hear from Matt Rule on Thursdays, he's not handing the playbook over. So really for us, we're not going to know really what they've changed or maybe not changed until they come out on the field on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, the part of the reason I used roulette wheel in the title is because those big plays are great. They can be kind of random. The joke called the touchdown play. That's what big, you can't just call it the touchdown play, unfortunately. Once in a great while, you'll be like, yeah, this was just going to be a touchdown. Then you're Lane Kiffin on the sidelines, raising your arms before the ball's even thrown. But those things are pretty rare. So it kind of becomes that. And I feel like we've seen Nebraska already try quite a bit offensively, in terms of trying to get the wide receivers involved in the run game. We saw the trick play touchdown against Minnesota, but I haven't seen a whole lot more of that since then, in terms of the true trick plays. But it's getting down to, I mean, there's 3 games left. We're into November. You just kind of got to survive these games and find a way. And, I don't think that's the worst thing for Nebraska because I think they've kind of been doing it all season long. There's a site that I go to pretty frequently called collegefootballnerds.com, and they open it up so you can model any 2 teams. And one of the things they have there is a consistency score of how much is this team complying with what the model thinks it will see for a future game. Nebraska's is very consistency score is very, very low. And in some ways, it's not ideal. It's not what you want long term, but in some ways, I think it's kind of a credit to them having been able to get to 5 and 4 wins. Is you can put the defense there and be like, they're going to be pretty good. You feel confident about that. Offensively, it's I don't know. Let's see what's going to work this game. Nebraska, I think, tweaked its passing game a little bit against Michigan State, and it didn't quite work. That said, Maryland is very similar to Michigan State defensively in terms of the numbers. but also in that they're on a losing streak too. Similar when Nebraska went to Michigan State last week. Maryland hasn't won. Well, it started out 5-0, so it's dropped four straight, which, teams in that position can be backed in a corner and a little bit dangerous, I think.
Yeah, and I should also note, because I was curious, and I pulled this up at this point based on when you're watching this, you may already be familiar, but if not, there's other areas too where Nebraska, I'll be curious to see how maybe these things benefit the Huskers is with injury returns. So we know that Herzog is expected to play, which is a big deal. Princewell is still likely, he's working through concussion protocol. So it's unclear there. It sounds like Billy Kemp is a potential to get back to work on the offensive side of things and not just being kind of a decoy on special teams. So, I mean, those things can have an impact. Those are just a couple of quick things that, we'll see. But yeah, I'm kind of, and I know we said this, it was really interesting to kind of see the reaction after the loss to Michigan State, because I know that we were pretty clear that this team still has a ton of potential and it was okay. And some people were like, no, that was really bad. And I think there's kind of two sides to this that can be true at the same time. And that is, yeah, Saturday may not have been what was expected, but Nebraska is still outperforming what I think overall was expected of it as a team this whole season. So I think that's really where I look at these next, basically when I look at Maryland, Wisconsin, Iowa, you need one to get bowl eligible. But Matt Rule isn't just playing for one, he's playing for all three. But at the same time, really what Nebraska is doing is just playing to surpass its expectations. And so whether the players that have been out are able to come back in and play, whether they're not available, so on and so forth. This is really a team, again, that just needs to play like you've got nothing to lose and kind of just be a little, I don't know. So maybe we'll see that from the coaching as well of, hey, let's get a little bit creative. Let's have a little bit of fun. I don't know. The thing is they have a challenge ahead of them. Maryland's quarterback is great. Maryland has a lot of weapons that can test Nebraska. Definitely need to see more from the defense. I did appreciate that Matt Rule basically was calling for ice in snow at Memorial Stadium on Saturday. That will not happen. So it'll be a very true fall day in the Big Ten. But he thinks that the defense is still stepping up to the challenge. They definitely need to play better than they did against Michigan State. Maybe it's similar to what happened after Michigan. Maybe this is a team that will find its footing once again, get that win to be bowl eligible, and then take that momentum forward. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean that's been kind of a key ingredient for them so far. Didn't feel great coming out of the Colorado game. Came back and you were expected to beat Northern Illinois, but played well in beating Northern Illinois. Got humbled by Michigan. Put it kind of out on Front Street about how important that Illinois game was, and came away with a good result there. And that just kind of speaks to what I think it would be fair to term and would have been fair to expect Nebraska to be in year one all along, which is kind of a young team. As Matt Rule puts it, they're still kind of figuring out how to win. And he differentiated this week. I feel like we've learned a lot in that, but then winning in November's even different. So, you mentioned Talia Tagovailoa, one of the most experienced quarterbacks, probably the second best quarterback in the Big Ten. He's very rarely off. He's just played so much college football at this point that he's going to be pretty good. He's going to complete passes. It's a big game for Nebraska when it comes to, I think, tackling. And they've been pretty good at that all year long, but that's just kind of one more thing that jumps to mind for me as we look towards Saturday.
Yeah, it's going to be, hey, we said this last week. It's going to be, it'll be a good game. I feel confident in that. We'll find out soon enough on Saturday if we're right. And again, it's on Peacock. So if you don't have Peacock, that may or may not be a good thing. So there you have it. only last thing I'll share for now. Elliott Brown actually was announced to have also unfortunately torn his ACL this past week in practice, or uh, basically. So it sounds like what I just think it's interesting to share because it sounds like Elliott Brown actually tore his ACL the week of the Michigan State game, but chose not to have surgery until this week so that he could essentially stand on the field and help call signals on behalf of like Garrett McGuire getting to stay in the box. So interesting little tidbit. Just kind of, I think the reason I share that is a testament to, for better or worse, one thing that I have noticed with this team is that they truly have bought in to what Matt Rule and his staff have asked. And I'm not saying that they wouldn't have had him do the surgery sooner if it was really, really necessary. They clearly were able to make that decision with his best interest and health in mind. But with that said, he's making that choice of, I want to be able to be present. I want to be able to be on the sidelines and help out. So let's move the surgery back so that I can do this for the team. So I say that come hell or high water, this is a team that certainly is trying to play for each other, and it may not be perfect along the way, but I feel like we're going to keep hearing about those little stories throughout where players make decisions to hopefully benefit the greater good and not just themselves. And I think that's a testament to what Matt Rule is trying to build. He talks about that foundation. We'll be able to evaluate it more in just a few weeks when it's all said and done. Hopefully not completely said and done. Hopefully as we evaluate what postseason then looks like for Nebraska. But with that, Brandon, any final thoughts before I let you go?
Just one kind of based on what you shared there about Elliott Brown, a testament to the guys that do those. I'd also say this coaching staff does a good job of making sure people know about the ways that some of these players who, whether you see them a ton on Saturday or you don't see them hardly at all, are contributing. And it kind of reinforces for me that we spend all this time talking about, is this the one? Does Nebraska get to fix here, or does it get to fix over the next two after this if it doesn't happen on Saturday? That's important. It would mean a lot for the team and for fans to get to play in the postseason for the first time since 2016. But at this point, I'm pretty confident through some of the things that have come up here late, like Elliott Brown. Nebraska has made some pretty significant strides this season, and that's going to be true regardless of whatever their record ends up.
Yeah, it's a great point. I'm excited to see. There's a lot of storylines to still continue to follow, no matter what the outcomes of these games are. But hopefully, also the outcomes match everything else. Again, bowl eligibility. Anyway, we will be back with even more on Saturday post game. So if you like these videos, be sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel. Just go ahead and hit like and subscribe right now. But you can also head to our newsletter, counterread.com. You can read there, or you can sign up for the newsletter to guarantee everything right to your inbox when it is ready. We still have line items for the week. There's always a game day guide, plus plenty more to come, some really exciting stuff, some stories that we've been working on. So head to counterread.com, get yourself subscribed. We appreciate you watching. Brandon, thanks for taking a little time today.
Thanks for having me.